Well, let's dive into it, man. We got fitness influencer, fitness coach. He refers to himself as Michael Smoak, but through going through his profile, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. I think he may be Clark Kent or something, man.
Dude, if I get another one of those analogies, I might start to believe it.
Have you officially reached superhuman level yet, or what?
I'm working on it, dude. If we can set this world record, I might start looking at a super soldier serum. I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna be doing that.
For real though, through doing a deep dive on your socials this past week, it's been super impressive, very inspiring what you're doing.
Thank you.
I mean, I think you've probably garnered around 3 million views in the past week on TikTok alone. I mean, how does that feel? Does it still feel like you're talking to a small group or just even yourself about something you're passionate about? Or how have you perceived this community that you've been building?
Yeah, it's strange because it feels not real in a way when I just record a video in an app on my phone and I don't necessarily think about the fact that 9 million people could see it, 100 people could see it. It's very strange. And I used to say, none of this is real. None of these followers are real. They don't know me. This could all come crumbling down at any moment. So I think in a way I need to keep that mentality to not get overwhelmed by the power, the pull, and the potential opportunity to make a mistake if I misstep or misspeak, which I have. And I've been reprimanded by other creators who have picked apart the video, and that's fine. That's part of the process. So I try to treat it the same way as I did when I got my first 100 followers. You know, my dad still says, he's very proud, and I'm very lucky to have a dad like him. He still says, I remember when you called me and said, Dad, I've got 100 followers. How crazy is that? And here we are, almost at 500,000 today on the TikTok alone. It's a blessing.
How long ago was that? And before you answer that, no, I love that attitude that you take with your audience. It's very real. You're not trying to come off as somebody that you're not. You're just being super authentic. And I know that that's why people are gravitating towards you. But yeah, when was that? The first 100 followers? How many years or months are we talking?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I recorded my first video in, I believe, the first week of March or the last week of February of 2023. So very recent. I think the third or fourth video I made is the first big pop I had. It was about protein. It was called Protein 101. And it was just the principle of the page, which was there's a lot of people overcomplicating things like protein intake and fitness in general. Keep it simple. Try to eat 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein per day. And if you're obese, eat your goal body weight in grams of protein. And that's really all I said. And I posted it and I went to bed and I woke up the next day and I had 100,000 views. And I thought, that's incredible. And I think within a week or within a day or so, I had 100 followers, probably within a couple of hours. And then it was 1,000, then it was 10,000. And that video ended up getting 1.5 million views. And that was the catalyst that gave me that first batch of followers that made me realize that I might be able to do this thing.
Why do you think it stuck with people?
I think a lot of things, they say luck is where preparation and opportunity meet. I think that I've spent the last 7 years trying to understand at the simplest level what creates the best results for people. And I have a deep empathy for people that wake up every day and feel like they're hopeless. Like they can't get fit. Like there's so much information out there, which is something I hear all the time. There's just so much out there. Where do I start? That I made a video where it was almost a moment of frustration. I had walked out of the gym and I was just thinking about how complicated some of this fitness content is. And I think that it's working, one, because I am being who I am. If you meet me in person, this is what you get. 2, it's not flashy, it's not edited. And 3, I try not to waste anybody's time. I try to be very punctual, try to speak quickly to appeal to those TikTok attention spans. And every video I'm thinking, can I create one piece of information that someone leaves with and deems as valuable? And that's always been the mission, and it always will be.
So what's the story? How did it start? Was this an intentional plan to become a content creator? Or,
man, no, I know. And I think I tell people that want to do this is if you want to be a content creator, you're getting into it for fame or for money, you're going to burn out. It's never going to work and people are going to see through it. This is all an accident. Honestly, I'd had such a passion for getting the most out of my body for a long time that I realized I would even hold people captive in conversation and talk about things that they maybe didn't care about. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to create almost like a video diary, and I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about, when I want to talk about it. And if people come, great. And if they don't, great. So the power of starting something with no expectation of how it's going to turn out, I think helped. But it really started in 2017 when I had hit what I called my F-it point, right? I had hit a point where I now knew whatever I had to endure to change was going to be less uncomfortable than where I was, which was drinking 4 or 5 times a week, staying up too late. I was 60 pounds overweight, and I had struggled so badly with self-image issues that it was time to change anyway. And I had gotten hit with a doctor telling me that my blood pressure was of a concern at 21, which is not reasonable to hear at that age. And the last catalyst was I had overheard a friend, and I tell this story every time someone asks me what started. I had overheard a friend in another room who didn't know I was around comment on my weight and say, damn, Smoak is getting big. And words can only hurt you to the degree that you believe they're true. And I knew they were true, and it hurt. And I made the change. That was my moment. And I took the first mirror pic that you see on my social media of me at my biggest. And the journey started there and evolved to, I want to look good, to I want to feel good, to I maybe don't have the most favorable genetics. So I'm going to do everything I can to stack the deck in my favor, to not be a risk or a liability to my future family members, which is really my why. And that's what drives me is I don't want to be a risk to the people that love and care about me because I've experienced that, and it's very difficult to deal with.
You did just mention on your Instagram this week that you had one of the most powerful coaching sessions with your community about finding your why. Why was it so powerful?
Because I've had a couple of guys join recently that just joined for the right reasons, that didn't join because of vanity. And I believe if vanity is a Kickstarter, great. We all want to look good. I want to look good. It's fantastic. But it's not going to keep you going forever. I have a guy whose main driver is I'm trying to have a kid this year and I'm on 5 medications. It's not, I want to get abs. And that guy's going to be successful. I have a guy who's later in life in his 40s who wants to show up. He's like, I don't want to be the fat dad anymore. I don't want to be the guy that can't chase his kid around the front yard. And I shared a story in the coaching community and I got choked up. It was the first time I've ever gotten really vulnerable in front of a group of people about a kid that I grew up with and played sports with that I ran into last week. And he developed a form of severe epilepsy late in life. He's a perfectly normal kid, smart, bright, college degree, had a massive seizure, everything changed. And in talking to him, I realized this kid would give anything to have his health back, to be able to go to a normal job, use his college degree, but he's working at a grocery store like he was in high school. And it was just filled with a lot of empathy and sadness, but overwhelmed with gratitude. And it reminded me of my why, which is, how dare I not make the most out of having an able body? And I can't imagine not doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's what you would say your why is. It all boils down to just knowing how able that you are and maximizing your ability.
I would say it's twofold. It's one, I have a body. Why not see what it's capable of? Why not make the most out of it? Because I now am aware of how that bleeds into other facets of my life, as you are too. When you show up physically, you show up emotionally, spiritually, mentally, better. The mind and the body are inextricably connected. And my second why is around family. I've loved my family dearly, but I spent my life with people I love dearly and couldn't choose to love, being unable to make choices to better their health. And now we're seeing the consequences of that start to come to surface. And I believe it's incredibly selfish that when you don't choose yourself in the form of your physical health, you will ultimately run the risk of burdening the ones that care about you and love you with that one bad phone call or that one terrible diagnosis of a lifestyle related disease. And I told myself a long time ago, I will never put my future kids, wife in that position, or at least do everything I can. And the person I choose to bring into my life will do the same thing. And it's a very simple, non-negotiable for me.
Love it. When you started your profile, was that on your personal profile, or did you start a separate profile or account?
Separate. Started on TikTok. So I have a Michael Smoak Instagram that has been archived. I couldn't tell you where it is if I tried. But I decided early on, fortunately, to separate the two.
What was on that? College
partying, being a degenerate, you name it. Typical mid-20s stuff, just life stuff. And I wanted the two to be separate. I always wanted to keep the two, my business and personal life, separate, which I've changed my mind on a bit. I want people to know me, but not too much to a heavy degree. So I have the Higher Up Wellness TikTok, and then about 2 months later, I created the Instagram, and I'm trying now actively to catch the Instagram up to the TikTok.
Well, it's also for sure working. Talk about that, about recreating yourself and your image. I just had somebody on the podcast last week, and they talked about that, how they were on their way to college and they were looking at their Facebook pictures and their friends, and they were like, I don't really like myself. I'm going to recreate everything and just rebuild myself into somebody else. Did you have that moment for you of, I'm going to just transform everything about me?
Yeah, without a doubt. That was one of the things I had felt. You feel an body, just a massive pain body around change until the pain of staying the same outweighs that pain of change. Because this, change hurts. Change is uncomfortable. It's uncertain. And I learned what creates change in my sales program in college. No pain, no sale, but that applies to life. No pain, no change. And I felt a great degree of pain of who and what I was. I wasn't proud to go out. I wasn't proud to talk about myself. I didn't have accomplishments. I didn't have proof. I was okay at sports. I was okay in school. I was always middle of the pack. And that's fine for some people. And if that's what you want to be, that's okay. But I had always wanted to have more, but was scared of the work it took to get there. So when I finally hit that effort point of whatever I have to endure is worth it, it was when I decided that I was going to reinvent myself. And that started with stacking physical proof. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my job. And I believe that if anyone out there is struggling to figure out how they want to recreate themselves, they don't like where they're at, but they don't know where they want to be, start with your body. Start with your physical body, go to the gym, stack the proof that you can do something difficult and stick to it for a long time. And that skill set, that trait, and that self-learning process will organically lead you on a path of developing other facets of your life. And that's what it's brought me.
Love it. Before creating the higher up wellness person that you are today, did you excel at anything prior to that?
Not one thing. Seriously, I was okay. Like I said, I was okay at sports growing up through high school. My coach asked me if I wanted to get scouted for Division III football. And I thought, no, I'm not interested in that. I graduated high school with a 3.0001, not a joke, by the skin of my teeth, because my father said, I will have your ass if you don't get the Hope Scholarship. And I squeaked by, and I was always just squeaking by. I was figuring out a way to get through it slightly above average. And I was just tired of it. And so, no, not a thing until, not necessarily when I created Higher Up Wellness, but until I lost the weight and started to fall in love with the process of making myself better in 2018 was when I started to excel in school, excel in the programs I was in, and am now talking about that experience on the internet.
So before talking about the experience on the internet and just going through the weight loss transformational journey, you were working a corporate job, and what did your life look like at that point?
So at that time I was still in college, community college, no direction, no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was a criminal justice major. I did not know what I was going to do with that. And once I lost weight and built some confidence in myself, I started just trying new things, researching new things. I became more of a self-starter, and it was there I developed an interest in general business. I took one course from a phenomenal professor who I'll never forget, Jed Gillespie at Georgia Highlands College, who ignited my love for understanding how businesses work and ultimately how to help people. Like, businesses exist and are in place to improve people's lives on the client side and the owner side. And I was fascinated by that. And that led me to go to business school, which led me to join a sales program with a sales bachelor's degree, which is very rare. And I excelled in that. Won a national competition, landed a fantastic job, excelled in that. And then I just decided if I can just believe in myself and stack that proof physically, I realize now I can do well in business school. I can do well in college. I can get a good GPA. And I apply the same mentality I did to marathon prep to building my business and building my page, and it works.
When did you start noticing that this passion for talking about health and all these principles that you said, when you were in maybe certain social environments, that you were the guy that kept talking about it? When did you notice that you started having that passion develop?
I think it started happening organically when, you know this, when you're a physically fit guy or you appear to have it together, subconsciously human beings view you as some sort of authority, because if they don't have that, you have something that you cannot buy. It's exemplary of your traits, your personality traits, perseverance, discipline for a long period of time. And people started organically approaching me, asking what I was doing. And when I told them how simple it was, I'm working out 3 times a week, I'm walking, and I'm hitting my protein goal. And they're like, but I thought you had to do cardio, and I thought you had to eat 6 times a day. And I started realizing, people think it's extremely difficult. And I've just been fortunate enough that I was obsessed with it and have done, at this point, thousands of hours of research. And I understood it at a simple level, and I could explain it at a simple level, which I think is an important criteria for understanding a complex concept. Is if you can explain it to a 7th grader, you probably get it. And that was always my test for myself, is can I explain this to a kid? And as people started to approach me, I realized when they would say, I never thought about it like that, that I may have some sort of knowledge or information that is, while not proprietary, is valuable. And clearly there's a need for it in the market. And that's what I'm seeing now in the reflection of the page is growing.
How would you summarize what your gift is?
Oh, what a question. I think if I had to boil it down, I have a tendency to hyperfixate on the things that I enjoy. And I have one goal in mind, which is if I cannot explain it in less than 30 seconds, I don't get it. So whenever I try to adopt a new concept, learn a new skill, that is my goal, is I need to understand it at its simplest level, and I can articulate well. I'm very fortunate to have honed my speaking skills and articulation skills to something that I believe I excel at. And that's my gift, is the explanation.
That. No, that's spot on, because that's exactly what I was thinking. When I was reviewing your accounts, I'm like, coach, personal training, all of those skills that you definitely have, but you're a teacher, you're an educator on breaking down these complex topics into a very simple delivery. That's definitely what I got from that.
That's a far better way to explain. I think if I could just call myself a teacher, that would have answered your question.
Literally, yeah.
It's a great way to look at it.
And one of the questions that I ask about purpose is, what is the topic that you find yourself talking about more than almost anybody around you, and you just can't shut up about it? And that's aligned with our calling and who we are and what our purpose is. So it sounds like you just matched your current purpose and career with what your passion has been for the past couple of years or even longer. And that's a rare place that most people don't get to or don't have the courage to step into. So maybe speak to that. How did you make that transition from a corporate job to a regular life, paying and affording your bills and expenses and everything, to then making that transition to, man, this is going to be an uncomfortable move, but I want to pursue my passion and actually go full time with it?
Well, everyone that's successful always says a lot of the same cliches, and there's a reason cliches are cliches. It's because they're true and they work. And I heard more and more that growth and the life you want is on the other side of discomfort. It's on the other side of a few hard conversations. And I heard it and I heard it and I heard it. And then one day I just heard it at the right time. And I knew the life that I want is on the other side of a few hard conversations. It is on the other side of a hard decision to quit my job 15 days after I started a new job, to come to the guy that stuck his neck out for me to the board. And I said, I'm going to go make internet videos. That was a hard conversation, but it ultimately made my life a lot easier. Hard conversations, easy life. And I decided the more conversations I could have that were difficult, the easier my life was, and the more I could get the life I wanted, which that could be a conversation with myself. It doesn't have to be a conversation with somebody else. So I think if people are searching, if they have something that lights them up and they're searching for an avenue or a way to share that with the world, you have to have pure, clear intentions. You cannot get into it for money. You cannot get into it to make it your job. You have to get into it to help people or to simply share or spread your passion and your purpose. And I did that. No expectation other than, if I help one person, this TikTok page is worth it. And I think that people fortunately can see that that is still my goal. And that's why the page continues to grow. And if anybody's struggling to do that, social media will change your life. I tell anybody, if you feel like you have something to say, make a social media page. What's the worst that could happen? Either it blows up and it changes your life, or your content is terrible and no one's going to see it anyway, but you tried and now you know. So social media is a life-changing avenue if you use it as a tool and you use it correctly.
The other thing about posting content and social media, I wrote this down today in reflection, was what doesn't seem like it works for us always works on us. And if it seems like people aren't listening to us, it's because we need to speak to ourselves first until what we speak to ourselves actually starts working, so that others want to actually listen to what we have to say. Does that make sense? So you got to develop the skill by speaking positively to yourself enough and working on yourself until you create a version of yourself that people care to listen to.
Dude, I would love to talk about that with you. That alludes to the power of internal dialogue and how people talk to themselves and the belief they have in themselves. I mean, you've heard the adage, a lot of you out there wouldn't talk to your best friend the way you talk to yourself. So why do you think that that's acceptable?
Was that the case for you? And was there moments where it felt like you were talking to nobody, or nobody really cared or listened, and then you continue to endure through?
Yeah. I have a conspiracy theory that social media tests you. It will send your page through these amazing growth pumps, and then all of a sudden no one's seeing it, and you just have to keep posting through it. And I think that this is why when people reach out to me and now they're asking me how to grow a page, a social media page, I'm not an expert in that. I'm just myself. I try to be quick and get to the point, but I'm lucky that my page grew quickly within the first 30 days. It may take 4 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, but I have a friend who posted on social media every day for a year and a half to no avail. And then he made one video different from the rest and he popped, and now he's got 500,000 followers. So I think the key to success for me was when I get in those times of ruts. I just say, you just got to keep pressing on. You know, success comes from doing the obvious thing for an extraordinary period of time. If I just keep showing up longer than the guy next to me, eventually we'll pick back up. And it always does. It's amazing.
I love your rants where you just go in on people. What is a current unpopular belief that you have that people need to hear?
Where do I start? I think I've got a laundry list in my phone of those, man. I made a video last week, 2 weeks ago, about how there seems to be a trend on the internet of bashing people who take their health, albeit maybe a little bit extremely serious. And there's a lady that only makes from scratch food for her kids, right? Her kids want Pop-Tarts. She's going to make homemade Pop-Tarts. And she's afforded the luxury to be able to do that by means that I'm not sure of. But I think that's cool. And do you have to do that to be healthy? No. Can your kids have snacks like that occasionally? Sure. But to belittle a woman and tell her she's less than you because she wants the best for her children is insane. And I opened the video with, when did you internet basement dwelling trolls decide that it's wrong or an eating disorder to eat real food? And I think it's an amazing example of how the internet comment sections are just filled with projection. And so my unpopular take is that if you think that eating whole foods or operating the way that lady operates, with prioritizing your kids' health and not letting them have that stuff, is an eating disorder, you may have the disorder. You may have to take a hard look at what you're doing and what you're doing wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's my unpopular take, that I think that the way that lady lives life is awesome. Is it for everybody? Is it realistic for everybody? No. Is it required? No. But for people to shame a person like that, I think is crazy. And I even catch it in my full days of eating. People are like, what's wrong with you? How could you eat like this? Do you ever have fun? Like, yeah, I love it, actually. I love my life.
Absolute madness. Let's break this down. I just want to clarify, because you did have that video, and then about a week later, you had the video about having the craving or desire to go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Get your fish fillet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got some flack for this one.
So I want to break this down because, and I also asked you a couple months ago, what is the most optimal step for those that are trying to have a powerful transformation, as far as, should it be strict accountability and discipline? So you're holding me accountable, and if I eat anything outside of my plan, we got to go do, a 5-mile run or some consequence like that. Mm-hmm. That has worked for me and my personality, but it doesn't work for everybody. And I want to try to figure out, like, is there a perfect answer or is there not? Because I know I assume you subscribe more to the concept of follow what your heart wants at that moment, or what you're desiring and what makes you happy, rather. And I think the method that I operate from some can see that as being dangerous, but I think the other method could also be seen as dangerous, as far as, just do what makes you happy, because then you get the people that are eating a whole bunch of goldfish, processed foods, Pop-Tarts, cereal, all the stuff. And I would go as far as even saying, with the content creator that you were commenting on, I wonder, and that's why I wanted to question/challenge or clarify on the McDonald's thing. I wonder if there's certain foods and ingredients that us as humans should just not even consume. Definitely. Certain refined sugars, processed foods, fast foods, soda, these are some of the things that I just don't have any plan personally to allow my kids to consume. Yeah. If I could help it, they will not consume soda. If I could help it, they will not consume the regular Kellogg's, cereal, Pop-Tarts, all that junk. And then it's like, to those comments, that's abusive, you're taking away the fun. And it's like, well, at what line is it? No, that's just logic, because in certain European countries and other countries around the world, it's literally illegal for certain energy drinks that we consume and all these different things. So clarify that for me. Yeah.
So above all, compliance is the science. People are going to see the best results to what they can stick to long term. And there is no one size fits all approach. So the level of rigidity that you comply best to, that is your compliance, that is your science, right? Mm-hmm. But someone else may need the 80-20 rule, where 20% of the foods that they include are a little bit more processed, because that helps keep them adherent to a caloric deficit, to mental well-being, to not feeling restricted. I found personally, the more rules that I created for myself that I had to endure forever, the more I wanted to push those boundaries, the more I wanted to break the rules. I believe that there's a component to that as early humans, we were wired to push boundaries, to find food, to find resources. And for me, I do believe everyone's diet should be around a basis of whole natural foods. But I also believe in the power of not having a relationship, but a perspective with food, and not having an emotional value. And that's where people fail. To your point, one of the things you said, and the question was, you and I have a strict challenge going, and if I eat a food off the list, we have to go run, which, by the way, I've started using negative consequences with my clients, and I owe you that. So thank you. I just had a client sign a contract that he has to donate to a campaign he's not a fan of if we don't hit his goal weight. But in order to experience or have a degree of success that is uncommon, I believe you need to endure a period of imbalance. And I'm not in a period right now where the McDonald's run, from probably the first time I've had McDonald's in 3 months, is going to throw me out of balance. Now, I just wrapped up an 8-week cut, a calorie deficit, and I wasn't doing any of that. That was my period of imbalance. So while my baseline is always 80 to 90% whole foods for 80, 90% of the year, there is a 10% for me that fits in there in periods where I'm not on marathon prep or actively trying to lose body fat, and that I will have the filet of fish, and I probably won't touch that again until the fall. So I think that people see that and they think I might do that once a week. They ask me about cheat days. No, that was a off the cuff, on the whim instance for the first time in months. So I believe what you do, your level of adherence, is absolutely necessary for periods to achieve uncommon success. But once you achieve your goal body weight, your goal physique, and you can start to reintegrate those foods, that's when I believe you've achieved balance.
Do you have those cravings often, the McDonald's runs?
Almost never.
Okay.
Almost never.
In your process over the past couple of years of your transformation, did you have to halt those desires or cravings?
All the time. All the time. And I tell people, I saw a content creator make a fantastic video about this, articulated it so well. I was having cravings for that crap all the time when I tried to fit it into my diet. When I was eating lots of chicken and broccoli and then saying, well, 8 Oreos fits into my calories. But in reality, those 8 Oreos weren't satisfying me. It was just making me want to eat more, because that's what those foods are engineered to do. So when I shifted my compass away from food quantity, how much chicken and broccoli can I eat, to food quality, how many vitamins and minerals am I getting, how much protein am I eating, and focusing more on red meat and whole eggs and foods that contain a lot more vitamins and minerals, my cravings started to dissipate. And for me, I believe that a lot of times those cravings are nutrient deficiencies manifesting themselves. And for example, people who crave chocolate, it's commonly known that you're probably deficient in magnesium. So when I shifted my sights towards as much micronutrient dense food as I could possibly eat, I just naturally stopped having a proclivity for those foods, which I thought was very interesting.
That is very interesting. Last year, for example, I went real hardcore, extreme, 75 hard. And then I started a carnivore diet towards the end of it for 35 days. Then I did a 5-day water fast. In that time, no eating out, all meal prep food only, or eating at home, no processed foods, no soda, nothing outside of water, nothing. And every time I do some radical challenge like that, I love it, because over everything, even more than the physical health, which I do want to ask you about fasting and the role it plays in your life, but more than the physical or even mental, I love it for the spiritual benefits of being detached to all things of the world. Because even people will debate, is carnivore better, is vegetarian better, is keto better? I like all of it as long as it's healthy for the spiritual resilience and mental resilience and discipline. It's similar with cold plunging. Like, cold exposure, yes, has a lot of physical benefits, but I prefer it for the mental endurance and resilience and building that muscle. However, during that period, I definitely built some cravings, to the point where right when I ended that fast, I was at Waffle House. I was at Chastain in Buckhead. I was eating
best burger
wings.
in Atlanta.
Yeah. I was eating wings like all that day. And then after, I was like, well, I'll get back on a plan. But the whole first month of the year, I was pretty much KO'd, just kind of eating whatever, not taking my meal plans as serious, just kind of being more, flexible with it and free with it. And so I could see how that could be a negative consequence to going super radical. However, it's a hard balance, because if I feel like if I tell people, yeah, just eat whatever you want at that time, it's challenging. But maybe the answer is, what I also realized through one experience is when I ate as much as I could when I was on a healthy diet, when I first started partnering with Derek's meal prep company, when I lived with my client last year, Josh, that was the first experience that I had a different perspective on food and diet and everything. I just ate. They told me, like, a lot of the fitness guys were like, just eat as much as you can, for, like what you were saying before, 4, 5, 6 meals a day. So I was just pounding meals, pounding protein. And what I found is I had less of a craving for the BS junk food. So I now have this theory I want to get your thoughts on. I left the gym this morning, for example, and some of the people that are overweight are sometimes the most disciplined, sometimes work the hardest, sometimes they're getting after it more than others in the gym, but they're still overweight. My theory is that it comes down to one thing, which is addiction, which goes into what we're talking about right now. Addiction to the negative foods that they're consuming, because if you break down addiction, it's just an emotional pacifier for something that they are consciously or unconsciously latching onto to fill an internal brokenness or wound that they have emotionally, and it'll emotionally make them feel better. And so their outlet, their DOC, drug of choice, instead of cigarettes, nicotine, alcohol, porn, whatever, just happens to be that negative processed junk food that makes them feel better or get them on that frequency that they're looking for. And so I break it down to people that are overweight. It's impossible, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's impossible to get there if you are just consuming whole foods. Doesn't matter how much steak, how much beef, how much eggs, whole milk, but if you're just eating whole nutrient dense food, you can't look like how most of Americans look today. So I think my theory is it breaks all down to addiction, but yeah, go into that.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Without a doubt. I've never met, I have coaching clients that have 35 pounds to lose. And that's just maybe a little bit of complacency, letting life take priority over your health. But when you reach into that morbidly obese structure, I have a couple of those clients who are extreme weight loss candidates, and there's always a trauma tied to it. There's always a wound, a death in the family, a history of abuse, something horribly unfortunate. And for me, something that helps me work through hardships, and this is just maybe a trait of mine, is brutally appealing to my logic. So if I understand the concept behind what we're really chasing, which is dopamine, it's serotonin, we want to feel good, then I can understand where can I get that from other places and help them to rewire those habits. Because at the end of the day, how we feel or don't feel is a result of the abundance or lack of certain neurotransmitters: dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine. Too much cortisol, too little cortisol. That is what's dictating the way that we're feeling at any given moment. When someone is anxious, their cortisol and epinephrine are high. When someone is happy, their serotonin and their dopamine are high. So what can we do to regulate those things, to cause a dopamine surge? Cold exposure is a great example. It's why so many people anecdotally say, I was so depressed and I started getting really cold every day, and it helps so much. It's that surge in dopamine that cold water creates. So I agree with you. There's always a wound that a person is trying to heal. And if we can work to rewire those habits towards, and of course, do the inner work to work through whatever it is that you're burying or not addressing through therapy or working with someone like you, I think that's the actual root solution. But in the meantime, go get your dopamine from the sunlight and a hard workout. And you might find that desire to go get the cheeseburger sort of dissipates. But lastly, yes, if you focus on whole natural foods that taste good, they don't have to be chicken and broccoli, steak, potatoes, eggs. I love these foods. It is so hard to not have a lean, strong physique. It just is.
Was that your experience when you were overweight and not the body shape that you are today? Would you say you had an addiction that was the result of that weight?
Yeah. Oh man. We're going to get into the weeds on this one. I think that I was going through a lot emotionally in my family, and it honestly became one of the catalysts for why I'm so passionate about this. Is my grandmother was one of my best friends in the world. She was my biggest fan. I was fortunate to grow up with grandparents, an opportunity that not a lot of people have. Never missed a sporting event, never missed anything in my life, and we lost her to Alzheimer's. And so to watch someone that you know so well, that knows you so well, just sort of start to disappear slowly. And every time you see them there's less of them there. And some days they may have everything. They may know you, they may know my dad, they may know their husband. And then some days I'm her son and my dad was her husband. And some days we were nothing, right? It was so hard to see. And I was burying that hardship. At the meantime, all three other of my grandparents were starting to decline. So I lost them all in about a 6-month span. And I was close with all of them. On top of my body image issues getting worse as I was discovering the party in college life. I had always struggled with that as a kid. I wasn't addressing that. And I became so self-conscious of that, paired with just ignoring how bad my grandmother was getting as she started to fade and forgetting us and ultimately losing her life, that I was not addressing all those things. I definitely was burying it with drugs and alcohol and food.
So bearing the emotions of your grandma and just family health problems in general was your main reason for going to that outlet of partying, drinking, drugs, and stuff like that?
I was just always trying to have a good time. Yeah, because I knew when I got home, it was some other news about, oh, she had fallen, or one of the other grandparents had gone to the home again. They were in the hospital again. And it was just sad because it's not like the grandparents that live far away. They were in my life almost every day and every weekend for so long. They were like other sets of parents. So yeah, it was always like, let's go out. What's the move? Let's drink tonight. Let's go to Waffle House. And I just got tired of that, man. It didn't bring me anything.
What came first, identifying these things emotionally or start moving your body?
Movement came long before, unfortunately. I mean, fortunately I got moving, but it wasn't until I started to remove myself from certain situations, to become more sober, to not be out late, that I just had more time to think. You know, when you go into that altered mental state, you're oftentimes not going to address those issues. And so as I would train, I would go to the gym and I would just get into my thoughts, get into this flow state and start to do lots of introspection and internal dialogue and unpack, like, why am I sad? Why do I feel the need to go out and drink? Why can't I hang out with my friends sober? I just kept asking myself why. And I eventually got to, you're sad. And you need to deal with that this is part of life, and stop running away from it. And everything got better.
I freaking love that, man, because I think that's the key. I think I love the role that you play with your purpose. And that's the cool thing about all of us for our purpose. We're all supposed to play one part of the piece of the whole puzzle as a whole. And we all have our gifts, and that's what we are supposed to utilize in order to execute on that purpose. But my purpose is, I'm very passionate about helping people find the interference that's blocking them from maybe being able to listen to what you're saying, even be receptive to it versus reject it right away, when in reality, it's probably because it's threatening some of their illusion that they are creating in their life about something based on the attachment that they have with an addiction that is trying to supplement a deeper emotional wound and need. And if we can just peel that back, because I have this whole theory that the stages of growth is first physical health and movement and exercise. Then you start getting into the mental discipline and, personal development, podcasts, positive speakers, positive thinking, things like that. And then you get into the next stage of spirituality, going even within, because I believe we are a spirit down to a core. At our essence, we are a spirit. We possess a soul. We have a mind, but most people's minds own them. We are not our mind. We are detached from our mind. It's just a tool that we get to use to create the life that we want. And we live in a physical body, but we are not our body. But those are the stages of growth that people need to go through, but not realizing that, man, if I'm not expressing energetically as powerfully as possible in this physical reality, it's probably because there's a deeper emotional, mental, or even spiritual wound that I'm not addressing. And I think that's a huge piece of why I think it's the main piece, if not the only piece, of why so many Americans and people around the world are struggling and overweight, is because of the wounds that they have deep down that they're not addressing, or using other things to avoid. And like you said about addiction, all addiction is really, another word for an addiction is a distraction.
Yeah.
It's a distraction to truth. So why do we go to tobacco or alcohol unconsciously, without even consciously maybe thinking about it? It's because we want to avoid whatever we can do to avoid sitting with our true feelings and thoughts about ourselves. And then because then we know that we have to face that and deal with it. And that's the thing that hurts. So instead, we just latch on to the first thing that, we connect to try to make us feel better, but it's only temporary and never sustainable.
You just said something quickly that I think was one of the most important things that you said, which is we'll look for any reason or way not to sit with our own feelings. And if you ask, this makes me sad. I used to be one of these people, and I've fallen into these ruts even now with social media being such an easy distraction for me. If you ask the average person our age, from 25, 21 to 30, when was the last time you just sat down with nothing and let yourself be bored, and wherever your mind took you is where it took you? A lot of them can't answer that because there's such a knee-jerk reaction to go for the phone as soon as you wake up. It's one of the most powerful times of the day. From a physiological perspective, you are the most impressionable in the morning because you are emitting theta brainwaves, which is a similar brain frequency to hypnosis. And so if you get good news, you might react more positively. If you get bad news, you might react more negatively. If you get stressed because you're checking work emails and text messages, you will ultimately be more stressed throughout the entire day. So I always say it's so important to just sit with your thoughts for at least 5 minutes before you check your phone. And most people don't do that.
These are two really good points that we could go to transition. One is fasting. So my manual for my life is the Bible. In the Gospels, the disciples asked Jesus when they were trying to heal a man, and then Jesus comes and he's like, basically, get out of the way, let me do it, and heals the man right away. And then the disciples ask him, why weren't we able to heal the man? And his response was, this type of demon can only be casted out with prayer and fasting. I think that's so powerful with sitting with ourselves, because that's the power of how I see fasting. I'd love to hear how you see it, but how I see fasting is it's an opportunity to detach from the noise of the world. Like you were saying, of just being alone with your thoughts. And I actually would say it may not be required, but it is a huge component. Like it says in scripture, this type of demon can only be casted out with prayer and fasting. It's a ginormous component to eliminating negative habits, dependencies, or addictions or vices, is just to fast. So maybe speak to the power of that when it comes to a health perspective of fasting or spiritual.
Yeah, I mean, fasting can mean a lot of things, right? You can fast from your addictions. You can take a period of abstinence from something. But in the purest nature of fasting, abstaining from food, from calories, is so powerful because it's so simple. And a lot of times I've found, studying people who are hyper successful, learning in my own practicality and my own application of life, the simplest things are often the most effective. That's why I always say it isn't easy, but it is simple. The simplest principles often yield the greatest change. And to do something as simple yet rare as not eat is so powerful. I mean, sitting with the feeling of hunger, most people, as soon as they get a hunger pang, they roll out of bed a little bit hungry, immediately food. It's unconscious. And so what could you do? What could you learn about yourself if you took a moment to sit with the feeling of hunger? Well, first off, you'd realize that it passes. Second off, you may realize that, I can be uncomfortable. I can sit with discomfort for a little bit and I'm not going to die. It's going to be okay. I wonder what else I can sit with that's uncomfortable. Maybe it's your thoughts. Maybe it's that thing you've been putting off. So it's this incredible ripple and domino effect from a mental fortitude standpoint to abstain from something as basic as food. I say all the time, most people have never felt true hunger in their life. They get a little bit of a pang, a little bit of a craving, and it's straight for the donut, the junk food, whatever. They've never experienced true hunger. And I think it's an important sensation to feel. And I think there's an incredible amount of research I won't get into around, though mostly in animal models, fasting seems to be a powerful tool for increasing our longevity, for improving our digestive health. The process of autophagy, cellular turnover, and repair seems to occur at a rapid rate when we abstain from food. It's almost like we were meant to do this occasionally. It's almost like we're wired. I mean, why else would we carry stored energy all over our bodies if we couldn't go a few hours or even a few days without food? So I don't.
In the hunter-gatherer days, that makes more sense.
That's what we did.
Than having convenient 3 meals a day at a specific time.
Never any other time in human history have we had food so readily available. I mean, if you go back to how we existed for the majority of our existence, it was sort of a warrior approach. It was go search for food, forage, and then at the end of the day, we feast. And once you adjust, I feel fantastic doing a 1 meal a day approach, or even just keeping my food very, very light throughout the day. I find I'm sharper, I think better, I think clearer, and I prefer that approach once I grow accustomed. And I believe that most people should and would benefit from a fast of some sort.
What role does fasting play in your life? Do you support intermittent fasting? Do you practice that?
Every single day for the last 8 years, with the exception of maybe 10 days that I've had breakfast, I have fasted. And that has looked different. It's looked like a strict 16-8 window of no food for 16 hours, food for 8 hours. 18-6. I've done the OMAD or warrior diet where I don't eat all day and then I have one massive meal. I've done 36, 48, and 72-hour water fasts, and which I know is something you have experience with that I'm sure we'll talk about in more detail here in a minute. But daily intermittent fasting is powerful for me as a means of controlling my food because I'm a former fat boy and I feel like I can eat more if I condense into a smaller window. It's the only thing that's ever worked for me, is I feel like I can achieve better adherence to my calories if I have 2 large meals rather than 4 small meals. I feel satisfied. And then from a fat loss perspective, I do take an aggressive approach to my fasting when I'm getting leaner. Right now, I'm probably around 10 to 11% body fat after being around 15. And I threw in a couple of 36-hour fasts solely because they expedite the caloric deficit. I'm burning 3,000 calories and not putting anything back in the tank. I can take a week off my diet phase from that perspective. So it's a part of my everyday life, and I turn the gas up a little bit on it when I want to get leaner.
Interesting. How seriously do you track all of what you consume throughout the day?
Not so seriously anymore. And I go through periods. I tracked religiously in an app with a food scale for probably a year. So at this point, you know this, when you establish a baseline strong enough, you have enough data, you can make informed decisions from there on out. That's anything in life. But for me, I know what 8 ounces of chicken looks like. I know what certain caloric intakes look like, and I'm always close. And I'll test myself throughout the year. But right now, I track my protein in my head, my protein intake, and I'm always focusing on protein at every bout of eating. And in doing that, I just don't overeat. It's just, it's so hard to overeat. If you start your day or your first meal with 50 grams of protein, you're going to make better choices throughout the day. So that's the modicum that I follow now.
I know morning routines are very popular, but you seem very passionate about yours. Break yours down.
Yeah. It's not 17 steps, and it's not going to require you to sell your soul to some internet guru or the entirety of the morning to do it. That's why I love it. And it was first brought to my attention by Dr. Andrew Huberman, who has been a huge catalyst of information for me in changing my life. And it's simple. It's water, light, movement, mindfulness. And you can get it all done in less than 20 minutes. And anyone who tells me I don't have 20 minutes for myself, well, you don't even have a life at that point. I mean, be honest with yourself. So for me, it's very simple. It's been the same thing every day for 2 years now. It's wake up, immediately beeline to water with electrolytes. And that can be an electrolyte supplement. That can just be a sprinkle of salt water. And a lot of times the hunger that people feel in the mornings when they say, I just have to eat at 8 a.m. No, you don't. You're dehydrated. But you start your day with food and coffee. You don't start it with water. So I start my day with 32 ounces of water and salt. And then it's probably use the bathroom and then immediately outside for a morning walk. And all it takes is 10 to 15 minutes. Get the blood flowing with some light activity. Get the morning sunlight on your eyes. That allows your cortisol levels to rise naturally and healthily, and also gets blood flowing and circulating to your brain. This is telling our body and brain it's daytime. Do the daytime things. I mean, before alarm clocks and screens, we rose with the sun and we fell with the moon. Everything in our body works on a clock. Our digestion, our brain, everything. And that little tip of morning sunlight has helped more people than I can probably count. And so the walk paired with the electrolytes, paired with the morning sunlight, that all in all takes me 10 minutes. I come back. If I have the access to it, I get cold either through a shower or a cold plunge. And throughout this whole time, I'm not on my phone. I'm not touching technology for the first 20 minutes I'm awake, and I'm letting my mind go. I'm just letting myself unpack what I have to do for the day and think, and whatever passes through my brain is fine. And then, only then, about an hour after waking, I'll have my caffeine. And that's my routine. It's the same every day, and anybody can do it.
What time do you usually wake up?
Now, 6:30. I've become more militant. As we talked about this on the phone the other day, when you become self-employed, it can get challenging to have that rigidity and schedule that the 9 to 5 gave you. And I found myself saying, I can stay up an extra hour. I can stay in bed an extra hour. And I realized recently, I don't know why, it was like I got slapped in the face. Actually, it was probably our conversation that I told myself, like, I need to have a schedule for the sake of having a schedule. So 6:30 a.m. every day for the last few days.
So I've never really heard the health perspective of it, but I've had a theory that, because it's worked for my life, the more aligned I was spiritually, the more my sleep schedule would align, like you said, with the sun going up and sun going down. And when I was spiritually detached or disconnected, that's when I was up later and sleeping in later. And when you look at when people are up past the sun, that's usually where most of the evil happens. And I don't think that's an accident spiritually. Speak to it health wise. Does that matter to wake up around the time that the sun comes up and go to sleep around when the sun goes down?
Yeah, there's an interesting study that was done by Dr. Matthew Walker, and it was an observational study. For those of you that don't know who Matthew Walker is, or if you don't, he's pretty much the leading authority on sleep. He wrote a book called Why We Sleep. He's a professor at, I believe, Cal Berkeley, and fascinating guy. And he shared an observational study of about 1.2 billion people, everybody that practices daylight savings time. And he found, like clockwork, when we fell back, when we lost an hour, there was almost acutely a 24% increase in heart attacks. And when we sprung forward, depressed. And everybody's sad and everybody's depressed. And when we sprung forward, there was almost a 21% decrease in heart attacks. So to say our sleeping and waking schedules are inconsequential is simply uneducated and it's uninformed. I mean, it is massively important that if you can manage it and maintain it, you need a normal sleeping and waking schedule. But of course, modern life has robbed people of that, either through night shift work, through odd hours, or through being on screens too late. And you brought up an interesting point, being spiritually aligned and having my sleep schedule feel better. I found when I was either further from God and not praying, not journaling, or recently going through some stressful personal life events, I found myself staying up later, sleeping in later, almost as if I was putting off the issue that I needed to deal with. And so it's really interesting to hear you say that.
Well, I audit myself a lot actually on if I find myself wanting to sleep in more or struggling waking up, I consider it a subtle form of depression. That's how I look at it. Like if my alarm, I'm pretty disciplined with it now. When my alarm goes off once, I'm good. I go out, jump in the cold plunge first thing every single day. But at times in the past, or still probably now, but if I'm struggling waking up, I immediately try to audit myself for what emotions am I storing consciously or subconsciously that is dragging me down emotionally that won't allow me to get out of my bed. There's even this trend that somebody was telling me about called bed rotting on TikTok. You may know about it.
I haven't heard of this.
Yeah, it's like this trend on TikTok. It's really sad, but basically it's a bunch of primarily younger kids that are it's bed rotting. They're just filming themselves stuck in their bed, and they don't pick up their cups and they don't pick up their stuff in their beds and their rooms, and they show
I've seen this.
But it makes a lot of sense. The people that stay in their beds the most, or even their houses, that's why I was never a fan of the COVID restrictions and staying at home, because I'm like, dude, we're social beings. We need to be out there. We need to be at the parks. We need to be at the run clubs. We need to be in the gyms. Like that's how we, that's our oxygen. But the people that are staying at home, homebodies, staying in their bed, and they just think, oh, I just prefer this. It's like, no, dude, that's probably some depressive energy that you're holding on to based on emotions that you're suppressing that you need to deal with. So that's been the case for me.
Full agreement. I believe people who say that they prefer that life are living an unnatural human experience, and they are burying or withholding something because, like you said, we are tribal creatures. I mean, I never feel, even digitally through my weekly coaching calls, I never feel more alive than I do after getting off a call with those guys or after going to run club in the morning. The power of community is a superpower. It's unbelievable.
So Andrew Huberman's podcast has obviously been a huge resource for me. As you're communicating, I think about like Andrew Huberman. I think of Gary Brecka, like how you break down some of these concepts with health. What separated you from the millions of people that listen to these guys monthly, weekly, or daily versus you that's able to retain and articulate the information so well?
I think that people get intimidated by a delivery maybe of a Brecka or a commitment to detail of a Huberman. I mean, the Huberman podcast is fantastic and it's where I've gotten a lot of information, but if you're not committed to listening to that, it's a lot. I mean, it's 3 hours of research, literature reciting, and he gets in the weeds. So I think the way I heard it articulated once was that you spark notes Huberman for me. You take the cliff notes of these episodes and you give me what matters from the Huberman Lab podcast. And that is true. And I've given him credit in many videos that I got this from the Huberman Lab podcast because I am simply willing to do the work. And I think that the passion that I have in being willing to listen to a 3-hour podcast about sunlight shows in my videos that people can tell I care. And I think the last two things that have made me fortunate enough to stand out and grow a page and get the feedback I've gotten from followings is people say it's authenticity. Like they can tell I care about this stuff a lot. And a relentless capacity for like, I really, really, really want to help. I have extreme empathy for these people that think it's so hard. But my whole thing is you're 5 or 6 choices a day, every day, from feeling totally different. And if you can just make those 6 choices in the right direction, your whole life will change.
Yeah, what I've found is those that are great in business obsess over the client's problems, while everybody else that struggles in business obsesses over their personal problems in their business, or their business problems or operations problems. Would you say that's you as far as constantly obsessing with your clients' issues and trying to overcome them?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's like the best salespeople are the same way. The best CEOs are the same way. It is all about the other person. It's all about their challenges and their pain points. And it's why I get so fired up when I respond to comments of people who tell me I'm negative or I'm attacking them and they're projecting. I get angry because at the end of the day, I just want to shake them and say, wake up. Like, this is your life. Take ownership, take accountability. You're right there. And it's why I'm hoping that I continue to have the success that I have been fortunate enough to have, is that when I lay my head on the pillow, I just say, was I able to help one person today? And as long as I can continue to say yes, this is worth it to me.
That's great. You handle trolls really well.
I don't know about well, but I handle
It's
them.
hilarious. You do it in a really funny way. How did that ever affect you, or right from the beginning you were kind of just like, bring it on?
No, it goes back to the relentless reminder I give myself of none of this is real. To a degree, none of these people would say any of this in real life or to my face, without a doubt. I've never had anyone who met me in real life say anything negative to me. And your desire for self-improvement will hold up a mirror to the people who aren't doing it. And that's where the negative comments come in, or the attacks come in from other creators even. At the end of the day, it's not that serious. Did I die? No, then I'll be fine. And I think it's Oliver Edelman, maybe Eberman, who said it. If you're not pissing anybody off, you're probably not doing anything that important.
Do you use that as an intentional strategy for your content creation? Because if so, I love it, but it works. Like these rants you just get on and you're like, hey,
it's not intentional. I've got a video that I posted yesterday that's performing well. And I think it's because I pulled over to the side of the road on the way to somewhere and made the video. It was that impulsive. And I think it's the emotion. I think that emotion, unfortunately, does lend itself well to the algorithm, because if you invoke a response, albeit negative or positive, someone's more likely to interact with the video, and that gets pushed. It's not my goal. It's not my desire. But I told myself that if I let these negative comments either go ignored or not called out, or they make me anything other than who I authentically am, then I'm failing. Because a lot of these people will get this feedback and it really gets to them. I mean, I have content creator friends who have talked to me about the feedback they're getting, really like keeping them up at night. And if I'm letting someone's opinion of me who I don't know, who is a user 3457 on the internet, dictate the way I make content or the way I see the world, then I'm failing as a human being.
Well, it also sounds like you don't identify yourself with the accounts.
No.
How do you separate it when it's having so much success?
What a great point. I'm so glad you brought that up. I've thought about this a lot. I'm glad that I didn't start a career in content creation.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I did the marathons and the ultra marathons, and I had a great corporate career and a great college experience, and I had all of these meaningful friendships and people that love me and care about me before this ever happened.
All that, yeah.
Right? That's what I lean on. I was doing all of this stuff. I was talking about all this stuff before I ever made a video. I was doing the hard things. I was eating the right foods because I wanted to, not because I wanted other people to know that I was doing it. And so that's such a good point, is you have to separate the IR theory. It's the identity role theory, right? There's a concept in a sales training called IR theory, that if you have a hard day in sales and you make 100 cold calls and 100 people tell you to F off and they say horrible things to you, they're attacking your role. They're not attacking your identity. So when I get negative feedback and negative comments, they're attacking the image they see of someone on the internet. They're not attacking Michael Smoak. And as long as I can keep my identity and my role separate, my identity is always at a 10. And that's my approach.
Well, also, you have so much substance in your gift, regardless of the medium that it's delivered through. So if worst case happen, your TikTok, your social media profiles all collapse, of course, it would be a loss and it would be upsetting for you because you've put a lot of time, energy, and effort into it, but you still have you. And it sounds like you're really rock solid in that identity of who you are outside of the accounts, which is awesome.
Well said. I appreciate you saying that. And the same goes for you. I think that if this all crashed and burned and went up in flames for us tomorrow, we have people, resources, job opportunities that we can lean on and fall back on.
our bodies, our mindsets, what we've done, what we've been able to accomplish. One of the last things I wanted to ask you, ultra marathons and having the physique that you have. How have you been able to accomplish both of those? Because usually I see people have the runner's body or the weightlifter body, but you've been able to have a good balance between them.
Yeah, and people have a preconceived notion that if you do both, you have to be on performance enhancing drugs to have both. And I thought that for the longest time. And I thought that if I ever ran over 3 miles, I was going to just liquefy all of my muscle and I was going to lose all my gains. And here we are 3 years into endurance training and running no less than 20 miles a week across that span of time, that I've got a better physique than I did 3 years ago. And it comes down to prioritizing nutrition and recovery and training style. When you add a stimulus that is the opposite of what you're trying to do, you need to account for that. And running and lifting are opposing stimuli. Running, your body's job is to keep you alive and keep you efficient. It's going to pare down lean tissue. It's going to make you smaller and more efficiently able to move through space. That's why runners look like that, is because they're efficient that way. But if you look at sprinters, they're jacked. So it's a testament to the type of training they're doing. Explosive training will build an explosive physique. So in doing that, my training is very calculated. It's around the mindset of, if I'm going to do a stimulus that tells my body to be thin, then the training I need to do needs to tell my body, we have got to hang on to this muscle for dear life. So I train with a very high intensity, very low volume approach in the gym. Meaning if I'm going in on a workout day, I'm doing 2 working sets in the gym of chest. And those 2 working sets are to absolute complete muscular failure. Because simply, without getting into the science, it makes sense that if my body's job is to keep me alive and I'm stressing the muscle to that degree, it's going to hang on to the lean tissue. And there's research and literature to support that training modality. And I've seen it in my own experience to be true as well.
For those that have doubts about their body type and their genetics, I've always been a naturally lean, thinner person, skinnier guy. If I said that I wanted to beef up and build your physique naturally, is that possible for me? If so, how?
Without a doubt, yeah. And it comes down to the magic pill being, do it for a really long time. Do the obvious thing for a really long time. Don't stop training. Don't stop eating. You're going to have to cut. You're going to have to bulk. And it's nothing sexy. And I think that I've never had anyone who was actively trying to do this tell me that there's no way you can do that naturally. There's no way you're not on drugs. It's never a person that's tried, not once. So I think that's a testament to the type of person that leaves those comments. But the magic pill is in action for a extremely broad time horizon. I mean, this is 8 years now of going to the gym when I didn't want to, even if it was 100 push-ups and nothing else. So if you're willing to do the work for not 6 months, but 6 years, without a doubt, but most people simply aren't. And that's the issue.
Would it be considered natural? I know when I use that term, when I say, are you natural? It's like, well, what does that mean? Because there's supplements and all that stuff.
And now there's crazy stuff coming out that people are calling natural.
Yeah. Explain that for you. Are you natural? Quote
Yes.
unquote?
Yes. I'm 100% natural. The only thing I put in or have put in my body ever is various supplements, but nothing in the regards of a performance enhancing drug. So now the only things I take are vitamin D3 with K2, my signature magnesium 3 and 8 supplement, and creatine monohydrate. And I'm experimenting with some nootropics, lion's mane mushroom, 5-HTP for brain health and cognition. But no, I've never injected or orally taken anything that would be allow me to fail a drug test for a bodybuilding show. Never once.
Why not?
It's so funny you asked that. I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine last night. And for me, it's all about chasing health. If I chase health,
Not the look.
no. If I chase health, the aesthetics will follow. That's what I tell my clients. That's what I tell everybody. If you just chase feeling as good as you possibly can, the byproduct is you're going to look damn good.
Yeah.
It will happen eventually. And so I'm so health oriented and my why is so rooted in showing up as the best version of myself that I know that me tomorrow would not be served well by taking that risk that steroids and performance enhancing drugs and even testosterone lend themselves to is a high risk for many, many health conditions.
Love that. Last point, because we talked about this the other day on the phone and I want to get your take. Thoughts on if you've built on that same topic, if you've built all of your social media accounts organically. I know there's a lot of pages on, pay for likes and engagement and then the trading engagement pages or whatever, and then also paying for everything. Speak to that as far as if you did build it organically and what your thoughts are on people that do it inorganically.
Yeah. So as unbeknownst to me, and I still don't know exactly how it's possible, I have not paid for any sort of growth that I've achieved. It's all been organic. I'm convinced TikTok's throwing bots my way to spy on me or something, but it has been all organic growth. And I think in our conversation, we talked about, I don't think it really matters. I think when people buy the following to achieve an authority status, that people see through that. If you go to someone's page with 200,000 followers, they got 20 likes, that's fishy. And I don't believe the following really matters even. And I had my perspective shifted on this from an Alex Hormozy video where he said, you need to reframe your perspective. If you get 300 views on a video and you're mad because it's not 30,000, you're upset. But if you had a captive audience, a room of 300 people listening to you talk, you'd be stoked. So that's how you need to start viewing it. And that's all I've viewed it as. If I get 100 views on a video, that's 100 people in a room listening to me speak. And that's an awesome opportunity.
I thought you were going more so on the side of you care more about the engagement than the followers, but that's an even better, because it is the engagement, but not, oh, it has to be such grand numbers. It's just thinking in perspective of even if it's 50 people, 100 people in a room.
Yes. Yeah. And that's honestly, that's such a valuable point to bring up too, that I think is worth talking about, is you would rather have 1,000 hyper engaged viewers than 10,000 casual followers. And I'm fortunate enough to have people that repeat offend and repeat comment on my videos and have built inside jokes about me. It's hilarious to see. But we talked about this. I know guys and gals with 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 followers on social media with a business 3 times the size of mine. It's incredible to see. And the power of engagement and having and building a community, if you're out there trying to create content, I think cannot be understated.
Yeah, you're good, man. Until there's meme pages and parody videos of comedians making fun of you, then we haven't made it big enough.
Exactly.
That's like the gold standard.
That's the horizon I'm shooting for.
People are making fun of Andy Elliott and Gary Vee. It's like, dang.
The day I get flamed for my pants being too tight is the day I know I've reached peak fame.
But I brought up the steroids with the buying likes and engagement because it's this idea of building an illusion in your mind that it harms you the most, whether you inject yourself with steroids to look bigger or get bigger, but it's built on a rocky foundation. It's just it's the poison to creativity. It's the poison to work ethic. It's the poison to being able to tap into the highest version and capacity of yourself. Because if I pay for a lot of engagement or likes or followers, that satisfies that part of my mind to be like, oh, okay, yes, it soothes my mind to be like, I did something, without any of the actual work that needs to be put in place in order to achieve that goal. So you're just inhibiting and stealing from your blessing of creativity and work ethic and all the other blessings. But
yeah.
Anyway, man, this is amazing, bro. I definitely see the path that you're going on. I think you're going to be known as a staple in at least Atlanta in the very near future of the health, wellness guy that people connect to for and use as a resource for insight, for complex concepts of health being broken down in simple ways. Definitely gained a fan in me for sure. I'm going to be telling people about you, and I want to learn more about your coaching so I can start feeding people to you for sure. Because not only you have the knowledge and the intelligence, but you're living it out. I love the duality of lifting and having the physique, but also being able to pick up and do an ultra marathon run. We met through Colin, I believe, Colin Beecham, who's putting together a world record. So we're going to be Guinness World Records here.
Yeah, we are.
Guinness World Record winners or setters.
We're gonna have a sick little plaque in our offices
in about a month. I'm putting that on my LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, resume. If I needed a resume, that's going on there.
Well, we're doing, we won't need one, but we're doing a 100-person relay race. The average mile that we have to hit is under a sub 5:27. So he's at about 5:33. I'm at about 5:36. So we got a little bit of work to do, but we'll be training together for that. Doing some other exciting accountability groups. I'm sure we'll be leading events together and doing podcasts and projects like this for sure in the future. So I'm excited for the future. Thank you for your time and coming on. Any last words, or where can everybody find you? And maybe tell a little bit about your coaching and how they can reach out to learn more about that too.
Yeah. And thank you for having me. This was a fantastic conversation. I'm a Higher Up Wellness on all social media platforms. On LinkedIn, I'm just Michael Smoak, Smoak. That's something that everybody messes up, the spelling of my odd last name. But Higher Up Wellness on all outlets. And if you're interested in getting in touch with me and learning about the type of coaching that I provide, you can simply shoot me a message on Instagram with the word goals, or just I'm interested in learning more about what it is that you provide. and we can talk, we can set up a call and see if we're a fit to work together. But no, man, I'm grateful to have this opportunity. I think you and I are going to get to know each other a lot better in the next couple of months for a lot of reasons. We're going to spend a lot of time together, and I'm just really looking forward to what we're both going to build here.
Let's go, man.
Awesome.
Love it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
bro.